Wonderful day, wonderful day, wonderful day indeed. This right here is your neighborhood sensei Fouché. And I always begin my shows by first strongly suggesting, because a lot of folks don't like being told what to do, true indeed, you know what I'm saying? And I understand that. So, in forward conversation, again, this time I will emphatically implore for all of you beautiful, wonderful, loving, self-worthy individuals to stay woke. But in the process, never get all stressed out. You know what I'm saying? Take all necessary meditative steps and procedures, including environmental change if necessary, to relax. And always be prepared. Because Sensei Fouché is all about those notes, you know what I'm saying? Relax and take notes. Relax and take notes. I just want to mix that. Relax and take notes. That notorious B.I.G. Relax and take notes. Relax and take notes. Sponsorship shout out to Mr. J.F. Winter of Nasty Noise Music Productions. NNMP is the acronym. You know what I'm saying? All instrumentals that are played in the background outside of this hard rain is supplied. Excuse me, I was in the middle of a burp. Supplied by Mr. J.F. Winter of Nasty Noise Music Productions again. N.N.M.P. is the acronym. And all you have to do is just follow the elephant in the room. You know what I'm saying? And you'll be plugged in. You know, it's all smooth. My next sponsorship shout out is going to go to Opus Clips. All of my short clips that you may have randomly seen played in succession are all provided by Opus Clips. You know what I'm saying? I decided to hook myself up with a subscription because I was really digging the format and what I'm able to do and how it helps what I'm trying to accomplish. You know what I'm saying? They do have a free trial, you know, so you could just try it out, you know, see if it fits you. You know, it's like a pair of shoes, you know. You try it on, see if it fit, you know, walk around in it a little bit, see if it's real comfortable, and, you know, when you're really digging it, you know, then you'll operate business and go forward into, you know, processing payment, you know, and having ownership. So Opus Clips, that's what's up. That's what I use. And I am more than extremely satisfied. Okay, so today's date is the 1st of July. My mom's mom, who passed away in 2013, today was her birthday, and I honor her. So Miss Hattie, you know, I call her grandma, but, you know, Miss Hattie, you're always remembered, and yeah, grandson is here, you know what I'm saying? And he's talking to these wonderful people out here trying to spread some information and a lot of forward suggestions that elders gave me, you know, when I was a young, hard-headed dude, or even still adult, hard-headed dude, you know what I'm saying? But we have been covering, you know, immature people. More than parents, you know, and I'm not going to pull the book right now for a moment. You know, let's get into a short conversation. There are a lot of different people, and understanding different character types, really, not really, I don't want to say honoring those character types, but being aware of the fact that there are different types. And you have to accept that. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of it, you really don't have to deal with it, especially when you identify specifically with what it is. There are moments where you would have to be assertive into your informative pathways, you know, but in a lot of situations, like you could just save yourself the trouble by predicting, the outcome of something that is minimal in relevance, for your energy, unless you choose to give it that time. You know what I'm saying? We all deal with things, people we're involved with from a relationship standpoint of, what's the word I'm looking for, but romantic, or, just a very close friendship, being a sibling, being a son, daughter, father, mother, uncle, aunt, understanding different types of people and usually how they operate and how they move will save you a whole lot of unnecessary conversations, interactions. You don't have to do none of that. Like, you could be more low minimal stress by understanding problem based as opposed to solution oriented. And I've used those terms before, you know what I'm saying? And the more that you kind of follow and flow, you should be able to dig what I'm trying to, drop on you, you know what I'm saying? Because it's authentic. And that's going to lead me into this wonderful book that we've been covering thus far, which is Adult Children of Emotionally Immature People. And it does say parents, but, parents are just a specific title of people. And I really relate this more to people because your parents are just people. You know what I'm saying? No different than, your siblings or, your cousin. I mean, society. We ain't gonna just talk in simple ABC, simple ABC. You know what I'm saying? We all get that. So let's move forward. Lindsay C. Gibson is the author. How to heal from distant, rejecting, or self-involved people / parents. You know what I'm saying? Was your parent difficult, immature, or emotionally unavailable? And I always read this again at the beginning of every show just to lead again into our core reference in conversation. If you grew up with an emotionally immature, unavailable, or selfish parent, you may have lingering feelings of anger, right? I mean, I talk about that. Let me move forward for a minute. Loneliness, betrayal, or abandonment. You may recall your childhood as a time when your emotional needs were not met, when your feelings were dismissed, or when you took on adult levels of responsibility in an effort to compensate for your parents' behavior. These wounds can be healed and you can move forward in your life. And what I was about to intercede with prior was being honest in the fact that a lot of us do not have control of our emotions and expressing those emotions. And that causes a whole lot more problems that you would create through how you deal with information and respond to that information. Right? Like I said, when you understand certain prototypes, character types, like, you could save yourself a lot of unnecessary conversations and aggravation when you know the outcome, unless it's specifically catered to something itemizingly important, of the most importance to cover. Then you would have to have those conversations and be right on point, because if you become emotionally uncontrolled because you're so invested within that topic of conversation as well as the relationship, you know, there are going to be problems still attached to, or I should change up and also add incompleteness into having any kind of resolve or hopes for any kind of resolve to the situation that is problematic. You know, word salad that, whoever that lady was that, you know, tried to throw a dart at me. You know, connecting words, that's something I've been working on from this aspect as opposed to writing, you know, which leads me into, let me shout out, I have my introductory Sensei Fouché music with vocals album out right now, which is Patient XY1973 330311. And it is about feelings, emotions, not having control, the lack of control of your feelings and expressing your emotions, and how to move forward in the process past that, and having more control and understanding of your feelings and emotions. And that's what this album that I decided to move forward in arranging covers. You know, there was an episode of The Twilight Zone. I think it may be the introductory or the pilot episode. And there was a man that woke up out of a sleep, and he was in the armed forces. And he's in a town where there's no one around. At first it's daylight, you know what I'm saying? And he's outside of the town walking towards the town. He wakes up in this desert, like this desert type of environment with road. So he walks down the road, you know, he's hoping for cars to pass, run into people. None of that transpires. Then he winds up going into this town. And, you know, all these strange little happenings are kind of going on where, you know, something makes a sound or a noise goes off, and, you know, he's excited or anxious, not knowing, one, whether who the person is, whether there is a person, who they might be, and if it's safe, you know. So through the whole process of his anxiety and really being more hopeful, what was the word I was looking for when expectations, because he had expectations, because I always say expectations lead to disappointment. So when he starts to go through these different interactions of the possibility of someone maybe being in the town, because all these different devices and tools are going off. Like he goes in the movie theater and all of a sudden the movie starts playing. So he runs up into the movie projector room and there's nobody in there, but the film is rolling. And by the end of this experience, like towards the end of the day and tonight, like he goes into this extreme panic. And then he starts like pressing this call button on the lamppost, which used to be available back in the days before the whole everybody got a phone thing. Like they had safety assistance tools, you know, pretty much on the streets here or there. So yeah, he's pressing this thing frantically, asking for help. And eventually, you know, they come out and it turns out that, or the scene changes and he's in kind of a conscious sleep, because they have him under some kind of sedation and he's attached to like probes and they're trying to monitor his activity, you know, as he goes through this isolation experience. It's basically like a test that the government is performing in case there's some extinction level event. They want to examine the resolve of how a man deals with that kind of pressure. And he totally cracked and broke. You know what I'm saying? So, what I was really leading into, of course, is understanding, what you're dealing with, who you are, how you usually deal with things, and whether that's comfortable. And then if you're going to make a choice in changing that, then eventually you'll lead and identify with tools that are going to explain and help you understand how to deal with your emotions. First, in dealing with feeling these things, and then in proceeding forward and not only identifying those feelings, but explaining or responding about those feelings. And that's a level of maturity that you hope to attain. But most of us are immature, and we fall back into this childlike rant or fits. That was what I was looking for, talking about before in the last conversation, is fits. You go into these childish fits, and then nothing gets resolved, and you're still in a high level of anxiousness, worry, or depression. Chapter 4, 4 types of emotionally immature people. It says parents, but I replaced it with people because I do that. Let me take a sip of water. Despite their different styles, all 4 types, and let me begin, we may cut this in the middle and then have a part 2. So, despite their different styles, all 4 types have the same underlying emotional immaturity. All tend to be self-involved, narcissistic, and emotionally unreliable. All share the common traits of egocentricity, insensitivity, and a limited capacity for genuine emotional intimacy. All use non-adaptive coping mechanisms that distort reality rather than dealing with it. And all use their children to try to make themselves feel better. They're in immature mode, and they only could relate or hope to relate in some identification on a minimized level, someone to communicate with. You know what I'm saying? Until those children may become mature beyond the parents, and then they get tired of it. You know what I'm saying? And all use their children to try to make themselves feel better, often leading to a parent-child role reversal and exposing their children to adult issues in an overwhelming way. In addition, all 4 types have poor resonance with other people's feelings. They have extreme boundary problems, either getting too involved or refusing to get involved at all. Most tolerate frustration poorly and use emotional tactics or threats rather than verbal communication to get what they want. All 4 types of parents resist seeing their children as, and I'm having trouble flipping the page. Let's get a little wetness. Separate individuals, and instead relate to them strictly on the basis of their own needs. And with all 4 styles, children end up feeling de-selfed because their needs and interests are eclipsed by what's important to their parents. You know, they're supposed to feel obligated into investing in their parents' immature level of communication and dealing with situations. Okay, four types of parents. Emotional parents are run by their feelings, swinging between over involvement and abrupt withdrawal. They are prone to frightening instability and unpredictability. Overwhelmed by anxiety, they rely on others to stabilize them. They treat small upsets like the end of the world and see other people as either rescuers or abandoners. And that's an extremely, I mean, all of these have their flaws, but I could identify in some relation to all of these through some form of experience. Trust me, we don't have the time in this specific format for me to itemize through all of these stories that specifically relate to these identifications. Driven parents, number two. Number one was emotional parents. Number two, driven parents are compulsively goal-oriented and super busy. They can't stop trying to perfect everything, including other people. Although they rarely pause long enough to have true empathy for their children, they are controlling and interfering when it comes to running their children's lives. And basically, these are parents that are going to parent their children even in their children's adulthood. You know, these children are usually so disassociated and immature that their parents feel obligated, you know, to take care of them because these children never measure up because they have expectations which lead to those consistent disappointments. Number three, passive parents. Passive parents have a laissez-faire mindset and avoid dealing with anything upsetting. And I'm kind of dealing with this in some sense personally now. You know, passive parent, laissez-faire mindset, and avoid dealing with anything upsetting. You know, and the person that I'm identifying, like they have problems with feeling that, you know, someone doesn't like them. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you know, I personally, in my own tongue, I prefer for you to respect me more than like me. You know what I'm saying? If I'm on point and I am honorable, honest, and consistent in who I am, you know, and I have boundaries, I'm not going to let you overstep or disrespect those boundaries that I have because of the high level of self-value, love, and worth that I identify with. You know what I'm saying? But there's other people that need these or feel obligated to need these sponge off of these other people and use their feelings for their own benefit, and they will dismiss or be, like they said, blase about handling things. They're less obviously harmful than the other types, but have their own negative effects. They readily take a back seat to a dominant mate. You know what I'm saying? And I know I could be dominant, and that's only because, you know, I am self-assured in who I am and have a moral foundation. I am extremely interested in compromise at all times, as long as you are not going to disrespect me or try to insult my intelligence, because then I'm going to have to try to check you. So again, they readily take a back seat to a dominant mate, even allowing abuse and neglect to occur by looking the other way. And this is how they deal with relationships in general. You know what I'm saying? Every single relationship that they hold a connection to, they will deal with all of these relationships the same, and all of these personalities will be more dominant over this type of personality person. They cope by minimizing problems and acquiescing. Let's look that up. You know what I'm saying? Because you know we be about these words. Acquiescing. Where, there we go. I just have to get the spelling because acquiesce. Acquiesce is a verb that means to accept, comply, or submit tactically or passively. It often implies agreeing or consenting without protest or reluctance. It's just basically, I label my personal word for it as sucker. And I don't really mean a high level of disrespect, you know what I'm saying? That's just how I identify it. And I guess that's through old cartoons with the Looney Tunes. When someone got fooled or suckered, as they felt, then there would be the lollipop symbol that covers their face. In replace of their face, there's the lollipop, which in old reference, lollipops are known as suckers. The last type of parent is a rejecting parent. Rejecting parents engage in a range of behaviors that make you wonder why they have a family in the first place. Whether their behavior is mild or severe, they don't enjoy emotional intimacy and clearly don't want to be bothered by children. Their tolerance for other people's needs is practically nil, and their interactions consist of issuing commands, blowing up, or isolating themselves from family life. Some of the milder types may engage in stereotyped family activities, but they still show little closeness or real engagement. They mostly want to be left alone, to do their thing. Like, you could all be in the same room watching TV and they're just totally isolated from the group, even within the same environment, immediate environment. You know what I'm saying? Or you could all be in interrelated conversation and they are very short and disengaged. And you could tell that in their physical interactions or expression. While most parents tend to fall into one category, any may be prone to behaviors that fit a different type when under certain kinds of stress. And within the following descriptions, you'll see a unifying thread. None of the types are able to consistently act in ways that would make a child feel secure about the relationship. However, each type has its own unique way of falling short. Let's start with the emotional parent. Emotional parents are the most infantile of the four types. They give the impression that they need to be watched over and handled carefully. It's basically like a child mind state, and if they have children, they expect for the children to not only take care of them in some form or more major physically, but also emotionally. They'll share their emotional dissatisfaction to the most depressing degree with these children, as if they know or should know how to identify with adult feelings, problems, or situations. It doesn't take much to upset them, and then everyone in the family scrambles to soothe them. When emotional parents disintegrate, which means, you know what I'm saying, they just kind of break, they fall apart emotionally. They take their children with them into their personal meltdown. I was just saying that before. Their children experience their despair, rage, or hatred in all its intensity. Like, you have no filter. Like, you're so emotionally invested in your own feelings that you don't even realize that you're speaking to a child, and you will use extremely aggressive language and behavior in explaining your feelings, which are uncontrolled. And it scares and confuses these children. It's no wonder that these parents' emotional instability is the most predictable thing about them. At the severe end of the spectrum, these parents are, quite frankly, mentally ill. If they don't know there's something wrong with them, that's the real problem, because we already would know, like, yo, there's something wrong with you. And the reason why you still have problems is because you don't identify that you are a problem. You are your main problem before someone else is a problem in the situation that you feel they are in control of in some form, because for whatever reason it was created. They may be psychotic or bipolar. It's just excuses, you know what I'm saying? It's just very immature behavior, and they weren't taught how to deal with their feelings maturely. Like, there was no adult in the room in their life at all. So they may be psychotic or bipolar, or have narcissistic or borderline personality disorder. And I just say phooey. I mean, they could label it that, which kind of gives these type of people a cop-out or excuse, like, oh, it's the bipolar, I can't do nothing about it. Baloney. You can. That's just your cop-out to use this clinical title of reference to say you can't change. And that's baloney. Let me pick up where I specifically was. There we go. People are nervous around them because their emotions can escalate so quickly, and because it's so frightening to see someone come unglued. At the milder end of the spectrum, emotional instability is the biggest issue, perhaps in the form of histrionic personality disorder or cyclothymic disorder. And let's look that up. Cyclothymic. Cyclothemia definition. Cyclothemia or cyclothemic disorder is a milder form of bipolar disorder. It is a chronic mood disorder that commonly presents in adolescents with large swings in mood and energy. People with cyclothemia, I gotta continue to use it. People with cyclothemia typically experience fluctuating periods of persistently elevated mood or hypomanic symptoms and low mood or depressive symptoms. All right, so let's move forward. characterized by alternating episodes of high and low mood. Man, I was reading the definition there and they just cut right to the chase into the next sentence. But I have to itemize specific things for all of you. Okay. Regardless of severity, all such parents have difficulty tolerating stress and emotional arousal. They lose their emotional balance and behavioral control in situations mature adults could handle. Of course, substance abuse may make them even more unbalanced and unable to tolerate frustration or distress. Whatever their degree of self control, these parents are governed by emotion, seeing the world in black and white terms, keeping score, holding grudges, and controlling others with emotional tactics. Their fluctuating moods and reactivity make them unreliable and intimidating. And while they may act helpless and usually see themselves as victims, family life always revolves around their moods. Although they often control themselves outside the family, where they can follow a structured role within the crucible of intimate family relationships, they display their full impulsivity, especially if intoxicated. Many children of such parents learn to subjugate themselves to other people's wishes because they grow up anticipating their parents' stormy emotional weather. They can be overly attentive to other people's feelings and moods, often to their own detriment. And I am going to leave our reading right there because that covers half the chapter. And if I go into the rest of this reading, it is going to be a little bit longer than I would like to put any of you through, because I would like to keep these conversations in somewhere in between 40 and 50 minutes. And sometimes they will go a little bit longer. I prefer for them not to be over an hour. If I kind of touch an hour, that just is because I want to stay within flow before I just, reach a comfortable cliffhanger point where I'm like, okay, now I could carry over into a part 2 and be able to flow within a consistent type of time structure where I'm able to, keep my commitment to a certain time frame. But anyway, I've been having the burps, which is a lot of this water. And I drink a lot of water. I probably drink a couple of, at least a gallon a day. I probably go through a gallon a day because that's my main source. Like everything else is just like a treat. If I have a root beer once in a while, that's a treat. If it's a smoothie, that's kind of like a treat or a snack. You know what I'm saying? But it's a different form of healthy food. You know what I'm saying? And I've been making it my point to be most mature in how I ingest things. You know what I'm saying? Maturity covers a lot of different factors. Let me share this with y'all before I go. I have a 16-year-old, and for a couple of years, I have been focusing on the word maturity with her. Because all of these young individuals claim mature. So my first question to all of these younger individuals, or even you older individuals, is simply, what is mature? Define mature. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of us would say, and I know I begin my programs about, strongly suggesting and emphatically imploring. Because a lot of folks claim grown and they don't like to be told what to do. You know what I'm saying? They say, oh, well, I'm grown, I'm such and such years old, and blase, so on and so forth. And they claim mature, grown. But when it comes to explaining, dealing with feelings, and interacting with other people and expressing feelings or thoughts, like you just break down immediately and go into these very emotional rants and isolated, insecure dealings, and how you handle, the confrontation within situations. You know what I'm saying? So, what is really mature? And mature is being compliant in respect to social engagement and not cross-contaminating your insecurities into outside of you into these sub-relationships. Like, that's your responsibility. And if you have a lot of problems in your life more than solutions, that is because you are problem-based as opposed to solution-oriented, and you identify more with problems and immaturity as opposed to mature pace, thinking, functionality, awareness, identification. But on that note, let's end our session because I'm looking forward to our next episode because I love chopping it up with all of you. I really have a high level of joy in doing this. And again, let me shout out my personal project, Patient XY1973-330311. That is the name of the album, and there is a specific personal connection to that title. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I decided to drop it the way that I did. But again, this is dealing with my own personal identification and experiences with immature emotion, immature processing, and dealing with feelings and emotions, and using a form of educated awareness to process forward into a mature respectfulness in understanding not only who I am, but why I am the way I am, why I feel the way I feel, and how to deal with these things because of my moral foundation and my boundaries. And I hold myself to my boundaries most before someone else. And that's why I'm dead serious with other people, is because I hold myself accountable first and foremost for my engagements, my interactions, and my choices. You know what I'm saying? So on that note, I'm going to end it and say thank you all. This is your neighborhood sensei, Fouché. Strongly suggesting, because again, a lot of folks don't like being told what to do. True indeed, and I know that. But again, I will this time emphatically implore for all of you self-loving, beautiful, worthy individuals, self-worthy individuals, to stay woke. And in the process, never get all stressed out. You know what I'm saying? Control those feelings. Understand your feelings. You know what I'm saying? Never get all stressed out. You know what I'm saying? Take any and all necessary meditative steps and procedures, including environmental change if and when necessary, to relax. And always be prepared, because Sensei Fouché always takes those notes. Be smooth. Unity in one.